Thank you, Andy. He didn't mention my golf game, fortunately. I'll take all the other accolades. Thank you, Andy. That was a very, very kind welcome. Badger Meter, you can imagine where that company was launched, right? That was when Andy was dean at the business school at the University of Wisconsin. But it's a great story of digital transformation. You know, it's about as old a technology as it gets, and we are revamping that technology with digital. But let's get started. Last year, I told you that we were facing a digital tsunami. This year, I am here to tell you that the digital tsunami is already here. So let me give you a couple of examples. The first example, Tesla's Autopilot. $2,500, a downloadable option of self-driving features. Think about that. We don't even raise our eyebrows when somebody says $2,500 downloadable over-the-air option to take your car from non-self-driving to autonomous. While we were all watching Google and their self-driving car, all of a sudden we see Tesla. That was a shot across the bow of a whole bunch of automobile companies, and now they are investing furiously to catch up. Toyota just put $1 billion into an R&D facility in Silicon Valley. And since we're talking about Google, what do? They just restructured themselves as a holding company, Alphabet, with Google just being a single division within it. They are investing, they have a car business, they have obviously the search business, they have a cloud computing business, and they have a healthcare business, and they have appointed world-class talent to run those divisions. They are very, very serious about attacking those industries. Disruption is closer than we think. Let's talk about their other invention, AlphaGo. You heard about AlphaGo? This is their artificial intelligence program that beat the world's best grandmaster at the game of Go, which is undoubtedly the most complex board game ever. Experts in computer science predicted that this victory, in fact, was more than 10 years away. It's already here. This is the technology that companies are using already to disrupt us. We're fortunate here today to have experienced innovators from large companies like GE and Disney to smaller companies who will be talking to us about their digital transformation journeys. We're going to be focusing both on the big picture and on the details of digital transformation. How do we foster innovation? How do we make the organizational change necessary? So at the end of the day, we hope you walk away with sort of a roadmap for what you can do back at your companies. Let's start with Netflix. Imagine you're the CEO of Comcast. You're Brian Roberts. You've got a lot of expensive assets on your balance sheet. You've got motion picture studios, you've got a TV network, you've got cable networks, you've got broadband infrastructure, lots and lots of expensive assets on your balance sheet. Are you worried enough about Netflix if you were Brian Roberts? I think you should be. Let's think about Netflix for a second. We all subscribe to Netflix and don't think very much about what that might imply. They expanded from 60 countries to 190 countries in one single day. Who does that? Does your business do that? That's unheard of. Now put yourself in the shoes of the people who are at the receiving end, the people running television companies and cable companies in these 130 countries that they expanded to. Overnight, they have a major challenger attacking their businesses. They have 75 million subscribers. All their 5 million of those were just added in the last couple of months from the international expansion. This is a global television network. In my household, we have given up subscriptions to cable television. We survive off Netflix. Actually, I shouldn't say we survive. We thrive off Netflix and Amazon Prime. That says volumes about what they're doing. They believe in what we call the flywheel effect. More customers drives more money and more data, which they use to predict the movies that we will like and target us with, but also to commission movies. They spend, by the way, $6 billion on content every single year. To commission content that they know we will like. So more subscribers means more money, more data, which means better content, which means more subscribers, which means more money, and that cycle continues, and the wheel spins faster and faster. That, my friends, is the power of digital economics. Netflix epitomizes the success of digital economics. Let's take a different company, McLaren. Isn't that a gorgeous car and a gorgeous building? That's a Norman Foster building. I love that building. And they make the most beautiful cars. Now, we all know what McLaren is, right? It's a Formula One car company. By the way, they do sell a few thousand cars, literally a couple of thousand cars to people who are sports car enthusiasts and can pay the $200,000+ that it takes. What if I told you that they were a pharmaceutical company? Would you believe me? Does it look like a drug developer to you? Well, it is. So let's walk through how this works. When you're in the Formula One business, you're in it to win. This is a very expensive business, and you win by seconds in a 200-mile race. So you might think that their core competence is great design and great engineering, which in fact it is. But you know what else it is? When you raise the hood of that car, you will find 200 sensors. And those 200 sensors generate 1 billion data points every racing weekend, which, by the way, is precisely 3 races. So who's the pit crew? We've all seen these movies or been to the races. It's not the guys who change the tires. What is them too? It is a whole bunch of engineers and data scientists who are their pit crew today, because they are making strategic and operational decisions in real time. Now you're going to say, what does that have to do with pharma drug development? Well, the same skills that allow you to interpret huge volumes of data in real time are extraordinarily useful in the drug discovery process in pharmaceutical research. And they have partnered with GlaxoSmithKline GSK to work on precisely that set of problems. So think about it. How many of our companies can actually interpret huge volumes of data in real time? And my suspicion is very few of us. So this is extraordinarily valuable know-how where they're finding that the domains in which that applies far exceed the original domain. And then let's look at CVS. This is an industry that begs disruption. I don't think there's another industry where people say, please disrupt it. Because customer satisfaction is low, it costs way too much, we don't get the healthcare outcomes that we want. And so here's CVS. They started life as a plain vanilla retail pharmacy, nothing fancy about them at all. Today, they are a one-stop health shop. What do I mean by that? Well, first, they bought recently, if you might have seen, Target's in-store pharmacies for $2 billion. So they've expanded their footprint. 2, they went out and invested in minute clinics. So they have 1,000 minute clinics, which are mini sort of doctor's offices embedded in their pharmacies. So you go in there for a medical visit, and if they can't handle you with the nurse practitioner who's in there, they have partnered with 3 telemedicine providers to handle more complex cases. So now they are providing sort of more complex healthcare, more healthcare as well. So then you look at this and say, well, what else could they be doing? So one of the single biggest problems that we have in medical care is non-adherence to the prescriptions that you've been assigned. So what are they doing there? So they have invested billions of dollars in a digital innovation lab in Boston. And you might have seen the G's moved its headquarters to Boston as well for very much the same reason. That's where the talent pool is. And they're investing in all kinds of digital applications that will reduce the adherence problem. So we will comply better with the prescriptions. So everything from reducing, so how do you reduce the friction in the prescription process You can scan the barcode on your prescription. You can scan the barcode on your driver's license that will automatically fill out the forms, the 10 fields in the form that you need to order a prescription. They will remind you when your prescription is full, has been filled, and they will remind you when to take the pill if you need that kind of assistance. And if that doesn't work for you, they will remind your caregiver to remind you to take the pill or give you your pill. And they continue to invest. And the other great invention that they're currently working on is a partnership with IBM Watson, where they will predict the patients who are most in need of a healthcare intervention, otherwise they might be facing a healthcare crisis. I want you to think about that for a moment. So it's not your primary care physician who's worried about whether you're going to have a health crisis. It's not your health plan that is worried about whether you're going to have a health crisis. It is your pharmacy that is going to worry about whether you are about to have a health crisis. This is disruption in action. Disruption is closer than we think. If you are one of their competitors, you had better watch out. John Chambers said it best. 40% of businesses will not be around in 10 years. In my words, disruption is closer than we think. So we all learned this phrase, give me a lever long enough and I shall move the world. In junior high, we learned that Archimedes said this, and he was talking about his lever. The top 3 companies in the world by market capitalization are Apple, Alphabet, and Microsoft. That is no accident. They are the top 3 companies in the world because they are software companies, and they use today's lever to scale, and that lever is digital platforms. We should all be like them. We should all be leveraging digital platforms to scale profitably and increase our market capitalization. Mark Andreessen, noted venture capitalist, is extraordinarily well known for having said software is eating the world. What he meant was that companies that compete with software will win in every single industry, and industry after industry will be disrupted. But the effects of disruption are not just about a company attacking our companies. Disruption, digital transformation also has macroeconomic effects, and it is showing up in the macroeconomic indicators. Growth, which we got used to 3 and 4% growth, is now at 1 to 2%. For the last 10 years, our GDP has not grown faster than 2%. That is half of where it used to be. Productivity growth, similar story, 1.2% over the last 8 or 9 years, half of what it used to be before that. Noted economist Larry Summers calls this secular stagnation. And the question we have to ask ourselves is this permanent? And there's a lot of believers out there who think this is the new normal. We are not going to be growing at the rates we used to grow at. So the question that confronts all of us as business executives is rapid growth in a museum? And how do we adjust to a world? I hope it's not, but we have to adjust to a world where, in fact, we may be facing slow growth. So let's think about all of this a little bit further. So this is WhatsApp. WhatsApp was bought by Facebook. Everybody knows what WhatsApp is, right? It's a texting application. You don't pay any charges. It's cross-platform, so it doesn't matter whether you're on an Apple or a Google or whatever. And you can even now make phone calls. $22 billion purchase price by Facebook, 70 employees. Think about that. How many employees does your company have? What's your market capitalization? 70 employees, 22 billion, that is completely crazy, right? For that number of employees to be able to create that kind of value. Let's give you another example. This is a company that GM literally just bought, Cruise Automation. They make the software that goes into self-driving cars. Purchase price, a little over $1 billion, 40 employees. Here's an interesting story. GM actually approached them for a partnership and said, we think we need your technology in our cars. They found the technology to be so valuable, the know-how to be so valuable, that they actually bought the company, A, because they wanted the technology for themselves, but B, because they wanted to make sure that none of their competitors had access to this technology. We live in an ideas-driven world. We live in a know-how-driven world. This is what makes or breaks companies. Let's contrast that with the not-so-old economy. So CBS, you know, it's a media company. It's been around for a while, but they've been adjusting to the times. $25 billion, 25,000 employees. So you begin to see how these ratios are very different. Now, I understand that the first two examples I gave you are pure digital plays, and these companies are not. But we have to think about these impacts. And then Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, which is one of the two remnants of HP. HP is a very personal story for me because I paid my way through grad school being the night operator for a mini computer center, and we ran HP mini computers. And that was the job that MBAs who liked tech dreamed of. Everybody wanted to work for Hewlett-Packard. And so when I see what's happening at a company, it hurts, and it's very personal. But similar story, $30 billion, 240,000 employees. So they have 30% of higher market value than Facebook, than WhatsApp, and 3,000 times more employees. So you see a huge difference between sort of the old economy and the new economy. And what we're basically saying is that in a software-driven world, your human capital requirements change in very fundamental ways. And as more and more of the economy moves towards being software-driven, we are going to see a decrease in the demand for human capital broadly, but we're going to see an increase in the demand for highly valued, highly appropriate human capital. Let's take a different point of view. Let's talk about physical capital. Property, plants, equipment. Here's Amazon. We all know what Amazon did to Borders Book. That story's been told long and often in business schools and long and often in the press. Well, who else are they impacting? Well, they're impacting other retailers as well. But what else? Malls. Malls are dying because Amazon and online shopping more broadly is as successful as it is. If you come to our house, 5 years ago, we had no clue who the postman was and who the UPS delivery guy was. Now we're on a first-name basis with both because they are there every single day, and we shake their hands, and we need them to deliver packages literally every single day. UPS is at our house. Airbnb. Same story. Airbnb is not just disrupting hotels, it is disrupting the construction business of new hotels. We are demanding less and less property in this interest. Let me give you a little sort of side note. We just saw that President Obama went to Cuba. So guess who's got offerings in Cuba already? Which American firm has offerings in Cuba already? Airbnb. 4,000 offerings, 2,700 of them in Havana alone. Now let me ask you about this. If you were Marriott, which just bought Starwood, how long is it going to take you to get to Cuba? Well, Starwood actually signed a deal with the Cuban government. They have got the right, a contract to sort of refurbish 3 rundown hotels in Havana, a couple of hundred rooms at most. It's going to take them years to get it up to their standards. This is what a digital economy allows you to do. And then Uber. A few years ago, we would have to explain what Uber is. Now everybody knows. Half of you probably came here via Uber. So let's not worry about the taxi cabs that it has disrupted, and it certainly has, because San Francisco Yellow Cab filed for bankruptcy. We know that. The price of taxi medallions in New York City is $500,000, down from $1.3 million. But here's what's important. It is disrupting the demand for cars. Sebastian Thrun, noted Google computer scientist and Stanford professor, CEO of Udacity, predicts a 70% drop in the demand for cars. Now, if you were an automaker, I suggest you should be they're already worried about it, right? And here's one other thing that's going to go out of business. Parking garages. This is another personal example because this is my parking garage. And nobody around here likes UCI parking. And in 20 years, this building is going to be used to generate electricity because they have solar panels on the roof. It is going to be barely used as a parking garage. That's my prediction. Okay, so what's the message here? A software economy is extraordinarily capital efficient. We have seen how it reduces the demand for human capital. We have seen how it reduces the demand for physical capital like buildings. Let me just give you one quick other example. It also reduces the demand or the money we spend or invest in technology. Because we all got used to spending lots and lots of money on technology. But now with Moore's law dropping the price of computing, and take a look at the extraordinarily efficient infrastructures of the cloud providers like Amazon, and Google is working really hard to catch up. That has reduced the amount of money we need to invest in even capital equipment. Put together, there's a tremendous decrease in the demand. There will be a tremendous decrease in the demand for capital. This, my friends, is the other phase of disruption. It's not just about your company being challenged by a competitor. There are macroeconomic effects that we have to take into account. That is the other phase of disruption, like I said. So we're all competing on a software playing field. There is no going back. We have to move forward. We have to find a way forward. If you are competing on a software playing field, there's only one way to compete. You have to be a software company. So when I say to be a software company, I don't mean that you drop everything that you're doing and emulate Microsoft, right? What I mean is you certainly don't start selling software. What I mean is you have to recognize that the value creation opportunities, the competitive advantage that you're going to get are increasingly derived from software. And in that sense, you have to become a software company. What do I mean by software? It's worth clarifying that. Software, simply put, is codified know-how. So it's know-how that we possess. So if you think of know-how as a set of instructions that allows you to put resources in more valuable configurations than before. So it's basically something that you can program to do something that results in a more valuable outcome. So it's the know-how that McLaren has to analyze race car performance, and it can be leveraged elsewhere. It's the know-how that Netflix has about you and us as customers. How do you actually become a software company? And through our research, we have, by studying lots and lots of companies, we have identified 4 steps that you have to engage in. Step number 1, reimagine your offerings. You have to push on the boundaries of what is possible. What you are doing today, in all likelihood, is not going to be enough. How many of you have read the book Built to Last? Many of us, right? And what I will tell you is that none of us are built to last because the digital economy is changing everything. We have to continually reinvent ourselves. So you have to ask yourself, what can I do now that I wasn't able to do before? What assumptions was I making about the past that gave me the business that I'm in today? Are my products and services good enough? So let me give you a couple of examples. If you're a drug developer, a pharmaceutical company, making expensive cancer treatments, but you can't predict which of your patients it's going to work on. So you are spending or demanding that a health plan spend a couple of $100,000 on a treatment that may or may not work. Wouldn't it be better to precision target the patients for whom it might work? If you're a university like us, you have to ask the question, is my current instructional delivery model good enough for the future? I'll let you in on a little secret. It absolutely isn't. It's not even a secret, actually. And if you're a car company, you have to ask yourself, are the current products that I have good enough for the future? And is my business model going to work in the future? And again, my answer is going to say no, and we'll talk about this in a few more minutes. So step 1, reimagine your offerings. So let me give you another example of that. GE now calls itself the first digital, or the premier digital industrial company. So they were an industrial company. So it's not industrial plus digital, it is digital industrial. And we'll hear much more about that from Bill Brew. Fortunate to have him here today. He's the CEO of GE Digital and the Chief Digital Officer for GE Worldwide. And what they are doing is fascinating. So this is an old line company was founded by Thomas Edison, lots and lots of different industrial divisions, big, heavy equipment, but they have been putting sensors in all of their machines, which sort of like McLaren, but at a much bigger scale, are generating huge volumes of data that they then analyze on an analytics platform, which makes their products that much more efficient. And so their redefined value proposition is, we're selling you a machine that is optimized, but you can also purchase based on outcomes. So you're not buying equipment anymore in all cases. You can even buy aircraft engines flying and pay by the flying time. So this is an extraordinarily important story that we will explore about how GE recast its value proposition. Step 2, codify your know-how in software platforms. This bears some explanation, so let me give you a few examples. Weight Watchers. Yes, even Weight Watchers. This is about, when it was founded, as old a business model as it comes, right? You went to a meeting, you paid $3 a meeting, and they gave you a plan, and they gave you points, and hopefully you lost weight. Actually, it's one of the most successful weight loss programs there is. I don't know whether you know this, but their know-how is actually patented. So this is valuable know-how to them. This is their formula for how we can lose weight. What have they done? They have codified this into a software platform and are making it available, in this case, at least through my pictures, on your mobile platform, right? So you can scan barcodes, you can join online support groups as opposed to going to an in-person meeting. You can track your points. It even links to your Fitbit, or your Apple Watch in the future. So it's interesting. So the Fit points that you accumulate that give you a few more things that you can eat are automatically tracked. This is Weight Watchers adapting to a digital age, and it's a great example of product know-how. So sometimes we think about what know-how do we actually have. Every one of us operates with unique know-how. Delta. Delta Airlines is winning in an industry where the competition isn't that strong, actually. Couldn't resist that one. Their on-time performance metrics, baggage handling, flight cancellation ratios, all of those, customer satisfaction, are among the best in United States carriers. And the story is very interesting because CEO Richard Anderson recognized that all of them, or most of the airlines in the US, were using a system offered by Travelport. It's a common platform that they were all using, which hosted their reservation system and hosted their customer reservation system and their operational data. And they thought about it and said, how can we innovate? How can we outcompete our competitors if we're on the same platform they are, where the platform provider is basically focused on the lowest common denominator? How can I service as many clients as I've got? And so they recognized that software for Delta was a core competence. And they brought back the reservation system and the operational systems onto their platforms. They now own the systems and the data, which allows them to innovate that much faster. So the reason I have an Apple Watch on it, that's just one simple example of how they are now pushing out their innovations to their customers and driving better and better performance. They are the only US airline to own their own reservation system and the operational systems, and they are winning. And then Nordstrom's. We all know Nordstrom's for having excellent customer service, but they have doubled down on digital in customer service. So they have done simple things. For example, they now have a customer book. For those of us from tech, we would simply call it a CRM system and not be impressed. But a CRM system in retail is very impressive. So every time you use the point of sale system, that salesperson actually knows what you've bought in the past and what you've looked for. So that, in a sense, is very impressive. They work with Pinterest, so they actually, in the store, will label Pinterest items, things that are popular on Pinterest, with tags that say that this is what people like on our community page. But what they've done now that I find really interesting is they just bought this company called Trunk Club, which is a Chicago-based company. And you know how we men hate, I should say we men, those of us here who are men, don't like to shop very often, particularly the busier you get. And this is incredible. You go online. I tested this. You pick the clothes you like. You tell it how you like to dress for work. You like to dress how you like to dress casual, how you like to dress to go out. And it remembers all that. It introduces you to a live person as a consultant over the phone, and you go through your tastes, and then they create a trunk for you, and it arrives like that. And you get the chance to say which of those things you want or don't want online. And then they send you the ones that you pick, and if you try them on for 10 days, and if you don't like them, you send them back shipping free in both directions. Think about what they know about you now. That is customer know-how. Step 3, redesign your business model. Think about partnerships. So let me give you an example. We talked about the auto industry today. So other than the car itself, which everybody's working on a connected car, a self-driving car, GM has placed 2 big bets. So obviously they've got their car business, but their 2 big bets are, number 1, Maven, a car-sharing service that they have just launched as their own internal operation. It's like Zipcar, but the one big difference is it's personal. Because of OnStar, they are now able to recognize you, and they can customize that car for you, by which I mean the music channels and other things that you might like are set to your taste. That part is Maven. The other more interesting thing I find is their partnership with Lyft. They just put $500 million into Lyft. Because think about this. When we move into a world of autonomous cars and ride sharing, and we assume that the number of cars being sold in the US are going to fall, what is the business model for a car company? Would you buy a self-driving car, or would you prefer to rent one? If I told you that the self-driving car is sitting in a hub in a parking, maybe that parking structure could be used for self-driving cars. And you can sort of summon one through an app in a couple of minutes. Maybe that's good enough. So how many of us will buy self-driving cars? How many will prefer to rent them? Nobody knows. So what GM is doing is making very astute investments in trying to understand consumer behavior. So Maven, their partnership with Lyft. Lyft is a ride-sharing platform. They're putting currently GM cars in these hubs where a Lyft driver does not have to drive his or her own car, but can take a GM car and drive it to you. And in the future, they will be used for self-driving cars. It is all about understanding the future through experimentation. Finally, you have to build an adaptive organization. This is a painter that we like. His name is Andrea Del Sardo. The painting is The Holy Family. We saw it at the Getty. And Andrea Del Sardo was a 16th century painter in Florence, considered to be very, very inventive. But now what we've got, so that's a painting of Madonna and Child, really, and what's really interesting about this is we now have infrared techniques that allow us to see what goes on behind the scenes, or behind the painting. And the thing we learned is that the painting actually does not match the line drawings. So what I mean by that is you find that Christ's leg has moved. You find that the Madonna's hands have moved. Because as he was coloring them in, he noticed that it didn't look as good as he wanted. Now there's a parallel here for business models, which is you're never going to get it completely right. Start with the line drawing, start painting it in, and as you do that, you will figure it out and you adapt as you go. The second secret that they learned was very interesting. They actually found that the head and the drapery of the Madonna were actually cannibalized from 2 previous paintings. So Andrea Del Sardo, it turned out, ran the most productive workshop in the 16th century in Florence. And guess what he was doing? Something anybody here who has worked with software well understands: reuse, right? So he was reusing drawings. But here's the message. As you adapt your business model, it does not mean that you have to discard everything that you've built over the years that is extremely valuable. What it does mean is keep the pieces that work, sketch out a future for the parts that you're not sure about, experiment, figure it out, and paint it in as you go along. And let me close with kind of a really good example of who gets this right. And it's Netflix. Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, called their culture, they have a document that describes their culture, called it the most important document to come out of Silicon Valley, which says a lot. So here's the thing. So when businesses start, they all start as creative because all businesses are built on somebody's good idea. And then we scale. And as we scale, we get bigger and bigger, and we build more and more rules so we can manage the scale, and we become sort of managed by process. Now, all that makes sense in an industrial age. But when you move those models to an information age, they become far less sensible. Because we need to be far more agile, we need to move far more often, we need to adjust to market transitions. So how do you do that? How do you scale without giving up innovation? So managing by process doesn't work anymore. Managing by sort of the bureaucracies that we're all used to will not work. And in a word, it's talent. You have to hire high-performance talent because to the degree that we need to be democratized, the degree we need people to be innovative, we need people to be creative. So you have to hire the right people because what you want is people to be creative but disciplined. What you also want is to give them the freedom to innovate, but they need to be responsible to the goals of the entire organization. That's a great example. So think about the talent. And most of us don't have the kind of HR practices that we need. Let me close with sort of Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE's final statement, with I thought, an incredibly powerful statement. Digitization is going to be the most important thing that CEOs are going to work on, at least in this era. You give up your latitude at your own peril. And what this says is you need to invest now. You need to move now. If you don't move now, your competitors will move, and they will reduce the degrees of freedom that you have, and you will be responding rather than innovating and leading. So act now, move fast, and thank you so much for your attention.